We've got a diamond Stephen Glass, and he's got us playing Dons are back, 7 points out of 9, 2-1 victory over Hearts Calum. What a week for Aberdeen.
I'm on top of the world, honestly. Couldn't have envisaged this happening. Let's hope it does carry on in the future, but enjoy it while it lasts. And I know we did enjoy it on Saturday night. Fantastic stuff.
Oh, we are definitely going to enjoy the positive upturn in performances, and we're pleased that so many of you have been joining the podcast over the last week to 10 days. As always, if you are tuning in via YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, remember to leave us a review, comment, hit that like and subscribe button. We do really appreciate the continued support. And to add a different opinion to the show, we've been joined by the Times journalist Ben Palmer to give an insight into the weekend's action. Ben, welcome along to Red Tinted Glasses. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much for joining us after what's been a very positive week for Aberdeen, because when I reached out to you to come on the show, it was safe to say we were not in this position.
I did think that before even the Hibs game, I was humming and haying about whether to accept your invite. So I thought, I don't want to come on and just speak about another week of pain, but fortunately there's been a great upturn in results, and this will be a happy episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought I was going to be getting you on to speak about a managerial resignation, but no, that's not where we are. Calum, another fine home performance, a 2-1 victory over the previously unbeaten Hearts. And what a noise from Pittodrie during that game on Saturday.
Oh, it was very enjoyable. I was right next to the fence, so I could hear the away end. They were loving life before we silenced them, and it was very much enjoyable. And then I had to be silenced on the train down to Kirkcaldy as it was the first train after the game, and I was surrounded by Hearts fans. So I just didn't say a word. Thought maybe best not.
It wasn't. It was great to maybe silence some of the smugness that Robert showed in the previous episode. I'm very much looking forward to his tears on A View from the Terrace this coming Friday. But on the back of his episode, I just want to say a thanks to those of you that are new to the channel, hitting that subscribe button. You know, we've blasted through 650 and even 660 subscribers. So just thanks for your continued support to the channel. And if you are new or tuning in for the first time, just remember to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and comment throughout the show. We do love hearing from you, and get in touch with us on Twitter at RTG_podcast. And Callum, as always, we'll look at the team news to start us off, and it was just the one change from the midweek draw at Ibrox. Marley Watkins replacing Johnny Hayes. Christian Ramirez fit enough despite his slight groin niggle to start. Happy enough with that starting lineup?
Yeah, 100%. I was very happy to see Christian Ramirez fit enough to start, and of course Marley Watkins coming back in. Glass saying previously that 2 games in a week comes too much. So right now, so it was expected, I suppose, from Watkins to come back in, but a very, very welcome sight after his performance against Hibs. And then he went on to carry on that sort of form, which is just fantastic. Can't complain at all. And I was also happy to see our boy Dylan McGee keep his place too.
Yeah, and even Dean Campbell as well at left back. But I suppose that being kind of forced with the absence of Jack McKenzie and Calvin Ramsey as well. Ben, how impressed have you been with Marley Watkins coming back into the Aberdeen side? And as Callum touched on there, he's not been able to play 2 games in a row due to his lack of match fitness, but striking up a really good partnership with Christian Ramirez.
Aye, he's see what he's got. He's got good pace, and you never realise how quick a player he is when he gets going. Even with the ball at his feet, he's rapid, and he gets past defenders so quickly. But what I think he's got, which I don't even know if Ramirez has got, is just such a wonderful kind of touch and poise in the ball. His goal against Hearts was just phenomenal away. He took it down, I think I described it in the paper as sort of thumped it into the net. And he didn't thump it into the net, he almost kind of caressed it into the top corner. It was such a clever finish. And we saw it when he was up at Aberdeen the first time, just how different an option he was and how much of a bonus it was when Aberdeen got him on the pitch. When he's fit, he's just a nightmare for defenders, which is exactly what Aberdeen want from him. But this partnership with Ramirez seems to be going well so far, or developing well so far. There was a couple of things, and I think it was a Hibs game. Maybe Ramirez plays it too quickly, or just a little bit out of sync. But you saw it on Saturday, especially with Hedges up there as well. It's a devastating trio. They'll score goals against anybody in Scotland.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it was more of a caressed finish because, Callum, I don't know about you, the view that you have from the South Stand, but certainly being behind it in the red shed, I was really surprised that Craig Gordon didn't keep it out, because I think he gets a hand to it, but maybe there is a bit of a thump to the ball and it finds the back of the net.
Yeah, and from where we were, it definitely like Gordon got a hand to it as well. And before Craig Gordon's getting a hand to it and still not getting there, given the size he is and how we saw how good he is as well. It's an astounding finish. I thought it seemed to take a lifetime to drop for him perfectly once he'd taken that first touch. But even then, he had the time to take it down and finish it perfectly with enough power to get it past Gordon. And, you know, it's exactly what you want to see from Motherwell, because I think at times in his first spell, we thought maybe he's got that link-up play, maybe not quite the finishing touch. But if he can carry on like that, obviously, you know, he's got a long way to go, keep that going. But it's more promising signs of the partnership, as Ben mentioned, that is starting to develop, him and Ramirez too.
Yeah, and I suppose the only kind of, you know, Ben, you touched on there about some of the link-up play in the Hibs game. The only time I really remember that link-up play not working, if you want to call it that, in the first half was when Marley Watkins burst through and there was an opportunity, I think, to square the ball for Christian Ramirez. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he gets caught in two minds or the ball doesn't get out of his feet, but he goes for goal and Craig Gordon saves well with his feet instead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they just look like two clever footballers. I mean, it's often kind of joked that Marley Watkins maybe isn't the brightest bulb in the world, but he's clearly a very clever footballer. I mean, like, you don't create the chances and you don't do that type of finish where you don't lash at it and you kind of take your time over it. I mean, that's a clever finish. And Ramirez is a very clever player. I mean, you don't score the goals he has so far this year without knowing where to be in the box and even the finishing, having the sort of calmness in his thoughts of where to put the ball. I mean, little things like that. I mean, it's just very intelligent. I mean, you've got Hedges, who is another really good technician in the ball. They're all quite good in that kind of aspect. So you'd think just with game times alongside one another, but they would all be on the same plane sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with that. And we're going to come on to the front three a little bit later on in the show, because there's been some news coming out. Today we're recording this on Monday regarding one of those front three mentioned. But I just want to go back to the defensive side of the team. Callum, we saw Dean Campbell, as I said, retain his place at left back, Funcho Ojo at right wing back. And despite how well Calvin Ramsey and Jack McKenzie have done, they've been the bright sparks of the season, and this is nothing against them personally. I think it's maybe safe to say we've been looking a bit better defensively since both of these players have been out of the team. We've actually haven't even conceded a goal from open play without these players playing. It's just the two penalties and the free kick, which we touched on previously about how poorly we defended that. Are we defending better without them in the team, or do we have to accredit this to the change in information as a result of them being injured?
I think there's probably, I'll be diplomat here, so there's a bit of both. I think there's maybe the benefit with Ojo and Campbell being in those positions that with their experience, obviously Dean Campbell's still a young player, but he's been around and involved for quite a while, been involved in quite a few games, even high-profile games. So he's got that discipline and the experience. So he sort of knows when to go and when to break forward as well, and perhaps not leave us so open and exposed at the back. I think they benefit from that, despite that obviously not being Ojo and Campbell's positions. I think it's harsh to maybe say it is because they're out. I know that's not exactly what you're saying, but just to pinpoint on that, I suppose we'll never know what the case would have been if those two players were in there. But it's just instead of looking at it a negative way, they'll spin it on the positive. There's the positive thing that they are not those in play in those positions. That's not their natural positions, and they can slot in. And we've still got those two players to come back, provide that competition again. It's a wonderful problem for Glass to have, considering you look at that back four, back five at any point and you think that is threadbare. And they're putting in the performances against the better sides in the league as well.
Yeah, and Ben, I suppose it's an excellent point. We're not trying to look at this in a negative manner on the likes of Ramsey and McKenzie, because, like we said, especially Calvin Ramsey and the way he's kind of burst onto the scene. But it has been a good way to see Dean Campbell and Ojo filling in these positions and coming to a decent level. And Glass saying himself, it's giving him food for thought for when these players are back fit, and obviously having the 100% trust, I think, to quote him in his Red TV interview, on putting Dean Campbell in at left back.
I was just laughing. I was saying this to someone the last day, but if you told an Aberdeen fan 18 months ago that the Aberdeen back three would be David Bates, Scott Brown and Ross McCrory, would wonder what the hell had happened to the world, not just a pandemic. Ramsey, it's a real catch-22 situation, the one with Ramsey and McKenzie, because we've probably been the club's two best players until now this season. Mm-hmm. But when they've stepped out, the team results have improved. I don't think there's a direct correlation there, but certainly I think the two young lads probably need to have their game time managed just that little bit better, because we were playing every single week. It was a huge reliance on them every single game. But and then clubs very quickly latched on and trying to exploit that to get the ball into those channels, because that's where Ramsey and McKenzie are getting up the park, so that's where Aberdeen could be exploited. Mm-hmm. Get the ball in behind them and attack from there. The lads who've came in, Food Soldier's played just about every position already so far for Aberdeen this year. Fair play to the guy. Like Watkins, he's deceptively quick, like he gets around the pitch. When he was playing midfield in his original time at the club, if you will, it looks so like just the pace of play and all that kind of stuff. He was beaten to second ball. Bloody hell, he's like a Duracell bunny at the minute running around that pitch for Aberdeen. And Dean Campbell, Dean comes in for a lot of flack for Aberdeen fans, and I think it's one of those things that local boys playing for Aberdeen just tend to get it a little bit tighter. Constantine's had it over the years, Darren Mackey. You go back for ages, the local lads tend to get it tight, but every single time Dean Campbell comes into the Aberdeen team, you can never accuse him of giving anything less than 110%. The boy loves it, loves playing for the club, and he was brought up as a central midfielder, came through the youth ranks as a central midfielder, but you see him at left back, he actually looks good there. It seems to be a position that suits him. He puts his heart and soul into it. And there's been a couple of moments, if you look at the goal at Ibrox, Ramirez's header, and then one of the goals, I think it was maybe the equaliser on Saturday against Hearts. It's clever passes from Dean, which play a key part in releasing, I think, maybe Ryan Hedges on both occasions.
It was the first goal on Saturday, because I picked that up as well, in the way he's worked with Ryan Hedges, and almost they seem to be on the same wavelength. Yeah. No,
he just knows exactly where Hedges is going to be, puts it into that area, and Hedges does the rest for it. But that's twice in a week. I know Dylan McGee got 2 assists this week as well, but to have that kind of influence and goals, says a lot for the guy.
Yeah, no, and I just totally agree, because Callum, we're big fans of Dean Campbell on the show, and it's a good point that Ben makes there about how he's come in, and there was a lot of noise around his inclusion in the starting 11 at Ibrox, and it's just noise to him at the end of the day. Just put that to the back of his mind, focused on his job, and has put in 2 stellar performances.
100%. I think weirdly he could be benefiting from playing at left wing, but I think there's maybe not that pressure in the middle of the park. He's maybe expected to dictate the game and things like that, and maybe you could say he's maybe still a little bit too lightweight to be playing first in football. But at left wing back, he doesn't have that pressure on him, and he's allowed to sort of play his own game a little bit more. There's not that onus on him to dictate the play and recycle the ball so much. And he does seem to be thriving there, which is obviously a brilliant thing to see. But then you've got him and McKenzie, both 2 young players, both 2 players that come through the academy, sort of competing from that spot. It's exactly what you want. And also I'll mention as well, at full time, obviously before all the players sort of went round and did their usual applause at full time, Dean Campbell, I saw from the south stand by the fence, he was the only player who went first to the red shed before anyone else was even thinking about it to give that applause. And it warms the heart a little bit, knowing that he's one of us, and he'll have enjoyed that result just as much, if not more, than the rest of us in the stand.
Definitely. And before we move on, I just want to pick up on a point that you made there, Ben. How impressed have you been at Funso Ojo's kind of resurgence? Under previous management, kind of frozen out, like you touched on there, slow. It didn't look to be suited to our midfield. Dean Campbell, as Callum says there, maybe benefiting from the overload in midfield. He's found a position dropping back into defence. Has Funso Ojo benefited from this new style that the manager's brought in and kind of got a new lease of life?
He's kind of just had the shackles taken off him. I remember when he first signed for Aberdeen, and he was in the middle of the park, and it was almost like he was a Ryan Jack type player who just did the boring kind of stuff, knocked it from left to right, just basically slowed the pace of play down, broke play up, an aggressive kind of midfielder, if you will. But when he comes in this season, all of a sudden he's playing in the wings, he's getting beyond. I mean, sometimes he looked like a rabbit stuck in the headlights when he got into the box, but he was still going past players, still being a threat. And now all of a sudden he's acting as a right wing back. And I mean, if you actually look at it as well, I think, I mean, I'm not a great tactician or whatever, but he actually looks like he almost joins the midfield at times as well to make it a free. It's quite clever how, I mean, fair play to him, because I mean, that's a big responsibility to shoulder, if you will, having to A, cover that flank, and B, sometimes have to step into midfield to add support. And there, no, he looks like a totally different player. He's came back absolutely transformed. I always liked Funso Ojo. Thought he was a good guy. He was always good in terms of dealing with the press, in terms of answering your questions and stuff. So you always like guys who are like that, I suppose. So no, it's good to see him kick on this season and enjoy his football.
Yeah, absolutely. And Callum, it was a very, let's be honest, uneventful first half with both teams really cancelling each other out in sense. And I felt really disappointed in the fact that we found ourselves 1-0 down at half-time, Hearts winning a penalty after Brown's loose clearance bounced off Nangeli and found its way to Josh Ginnelly, and he was hauled down by Joe Lewis. And I have to say, at the time, certainly from behind the goal, I felt it was a bit of a dive, but having seen countless replays, I can have no real complaints of the decision. I suppose your view will have definitely felt like a stonewaller.
Oh yeah, from where we could see, it's definitely basically been wiped out. I think it's the one time sort of in the first half our defence sort of looked a little bit all at sea. We got caught out there, and ultimately we got punished. I don't think we deserved to necessarily go in down 1-0, but you can't argue that penalty. Stonewaller, and bloody hell did John Suter put it away as well. I took a little bit of confidence in the senior centre half step up. I thought there's always a chance here, but I think he's the type of player that he could just do that every week if he really wanted to.
I actually took less confidence from the fact that, because the fact that Nangeli was the one that was a way to step up, and we saw how well John Suter struck the ball against Dundee with his goal in the midweek against St Johnstone. And I suppose you saw the kind of shambles of a penalty at Parkhead from Jack Marcus in the way he took it, but John Suter making no mistake from the spot, Ben. And were you guys in the press box maybe surprised that there was no retribution for Joe Lewis when he was brought down? I know there's this whole double jeopardy rule, but to not even receive a booking. I watched back the sports scene highlights, and I can't remember who was in the commentary, but they said, there's a booking for Joe Lewis. And I was sort of thinking, like, have I missed that and forgot to record it in my match report? Sure enough, he wasn't booked. I mean, referees have to make his decision. I suppose it was a stonewall penalty, but I think is it because there was a genuine attempt to play the ball that maybe it wasn't a yellow card. I mean, I don't think he's stepped out just to try and bring him down. It is a genuine attempt to play the ball, I suppose. Yeah, and I suppose he's also going away from goals, so whether or not that affects things. But
I think the most surprising thing about the first half was that there was an actual goal. I mean, it just looked like two teams that were just scared to make a mistake and give the other one a glimpse of goal. I think John Suter stepped out of defence once, and then all of a sudden it was the Hedges chance which was saved by Gordon, and that came about by Suter taking a risk and stepping out of defence. That was about the only time in the first half you could say someone did that. I was just surprised that there was a goal to get at the end of that half.
Yeah, and the fact that John Suter shot was Hearts' only shot on target throughout the whole game. Callum, were you surprised about how poor Hearts were, given that they were the only undefeated team left in the Premiership?
I think so. I think possibly the pressure after a few draws and then coming up to here when we've just hit a tiny little bit of form as well, maybe got to them. But I was the same as when Hibs came here. I was disappointed really with them. I thought they were going to cause us a lot more problems. I think the same with Joe Lewis. He against Hibs, he really had a save to make too. But that's welcome for us. But I did expect more from both the Edinburgh sides, in all honesty. But I'm very glad that was the only thing Joe Lewis had to do. I had a couple of times mentioned speaking about Joe Lewis, he needs to get off his line a little bit quicker at times. Goodness me, there's some hairy moments, especially in the second half especially, when sort of Bates is sort of ushering the ball toward, I don't have confidence in him, and he's ushering the ball back, and then Joe Lewis isn't coming for it. But other than that, no complaints really.
Yeah, now that you mention, I do remember those times as well. I wonder if there's a maybe slight lack of communication, but other than Ben in Hearts' midfield, who I thought was another standout performer for the Jambos, I was really disappointed from Hearts. Obviously, as an Aberdeen fan, it's great that they had an off day, but they offered really nothing going forward, and obviously missing Liam Boyce seems to have really hit them quite hard.
I can't remember. I think I've maybe watched Hearts once this season. I think it was back in the Premier Sports Cup group stages, so you can't really read into how a team is, but you do expect more from them. Before we were poor, I thought Hibs were even worse the week before. Hibs were so, but Hearts, it was strange. It just, with the way our support was, I mean, the Hearts fans were reasonably noisy, I suppose. They came up with a bit of belief in, right, we're going to go up to Aberdeen and get it up them and away. And it wasn't a performance that matched the following. It was just so tepid. And Boyce makes such a difference for them. Boyce, I mean, I think Aberdeen missed a trick with him a few years ago in terms of taking him to Pittodrie. He's such a clever, clinical football player. And without him, we're just very, very blunt. With the big guy up front, who Brown got the better of, let's be honest about it. And Ginnelly, I mean, I know Ginnelly won the penalty, but Aberdeen dealt with him pretty well. I mean, and GMS had an off day as well, thankfully for Aberdeen. But I mean, so long for Hearts fans that he's good against Hibs and keeps up his record against Hibs. Yeah. That's all they'll care about, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on the noise, Callum, how good was the Red Shed on Saturday? I know you obviously don't sit in the Red Shed, but I just felt that was probably the best it's been domestically this season. The noise coming out the Merkland was phenomenal. There seemed to, second half especially, they just seemed to have something about it in terms of helping the team on. And I know Stephen Glass and Lewis Ferguson both made comments on the crowd on Saturday.
It's annoying though. I think it is difficult for me to hear at times, especially in that first half, because Hearts fans were quite boisterous as well too. But especially in the second half, you're right though. The Red Shed really got behind the team, pushed them on, which is exactly what you want to see. That's what they're there for. And I'm sure there was maybe a few sore heads the next day after the win as well. But you know, exactly as I say, it's exactly what it's there for. It pushes teams on, and games like that especially, it's exactly what they need. When you go in at half time 1-0 down, and you know they didn't turn on them. I think Glass mentioned, as they expect, when he went in at half time, you know, the fans were still behind them, and it's exactly what we want. And also, I think the effect it has sort of going around the rest of the stadium. I know, like for example, the Hibs game, the Celtic game, especially, I was quite disappointed with how things were sort of at the fence. But on Saturday, they got going quite a little bit as well. The South Stand sort of joining in at times, even starting their own songs. It was chaos. It was, you know, not what you expect to be seeing, but I think the effect it has just on the whole stadium and on the team, it's a very, very welcome addition. And, you know, fair play. I hope you weren't too hungover afterwards, man.
No, I was driving, so that was a sober one. But Ben, I suppose being in the press box, you're a bit closer to it. Have you noticed I think it's quite hard not to notice the change in atmosphere at Pittodrie this season, but you've also been to Pittodrie quite a few times this season. Did you notice that big difference on Saturday from the home end?
I noticed it back in, I think it was the Brideblit game at home when Ojo went in this kind of stupid mazy for one of the goals, and with each kind of touch he took, the Red Shed kind of seemed to draw him closer, if you will. It was like, just a gasp with every kind of touch he took. I don't know what kind of way coin was flipped on Saturday, but Aberdeen shooting towards the Red Shed in the second half just makes such a big difference. I mean, God bless the Dick Donald stand, but I mean, it's not got the same atmosphere as the Red Shed. So I just think Aberdeen, there must be some sort of advantage there just to shooting towards that end in a second half, however small that advantage be. But in a Premiership season as tight as this one, I'm taking any one you can get, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Dave, if you're tuning in, you'll be delighted to hear Ben's comments about shooting towards the Red Shed in the second half. And I do agree, especially when you're 1-0 down and the team's coming towards you, whether or not that's the sucking the ball into net or building that momentum. You definitely felt that in the stand. And one bit of momentum that was created was Stephen Glass once again outthinking Heart of Midlothian with a tactical switch at half-time, putting Scott Brown into midfield. And Callum, you almost saw that instantly. Aberdeen started the second half on the front foot, and we've talked about this many a time this season about how Aberdeen create a lot but don't take the chances, and we get that equaliser within the first 5 minutes of the second half. And you touched on there about the crowd staying with the team as they went off, and it really got behind the team at that equaliser.
100%. I think, as we mentioned, you can't blame Glass for starting with Brown in that back three, given the way it went against Hibs and Rangers, obviously going into another game. But having foresight and seeing what would need to be done, pushing Brown forward, pinning Hearts back, giving McGeoch and Ferguson a bit more freedom to get forward as well. But obviously paid dividends, and I think he said post-match that they were maybe thinking about doing it, but decided to wait till half-time, so they sort of were shocked coming out in that second half, which I think, even though you might think can't make that much difference, it does. It really does. Those kind of little tweaks do make a difference. And yeah, it paid dividends, obviously getting that goal. Thank goodness. And Marley Watkins took it well. I was delighted. Got to rush the fence. It was great. Honestly, what a day.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, and I do think it's right, because it probably did catch Hearts by surprise, and it showed the fact that we scored so early on in the second half. And just to go back to the point that you were making earlier, Ben, about the link up between Ryan Hedges and Dean Campbell, they're linking together for Marley Watkins to score the goal. It's come out in the press today that Blackburn are set to revive their interest in Ryan Hedges. Reported rumours of £100,000 bids being prepared. Blackburn certainly the one that fee's been quoted to, and I know there's a host of other Championship clubs linked with the Welsh midfielder. How important will it be for Aberdeen to either one, tie Ryan Hedges down, or will they be kind of forced between a rock and a hard place of accepting good money in January versus losing a player for free in the summer?
Yeah, I suppose Championship scouts would be doing their jobs if they didn't realise that Ryan Hedges' contract's up in the summer. I mean, it's just natural that we'd be looking at him. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, like the catch-22 situation when it comes to the fullbacks, this one for the chairman. I mean, if Aberdeen, you would expect Aberdeen now to continue climbing up the table. So if we're going to sell Hedges in January, it's not going to be a fee that he's probably worth, let's be honest. I mean, he's probably that $1.5 million type player, $2 million type player. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get that in January, just with the contract situation is. So the question then is do we just keep him till the end of the season and hope that, by speculating to accumulate, if you will, by keeping him, but we'll finish higher up the table, qualify for a better European competition, get a Europa League rather than the Conference League, and the benefits that may take. I think the club are desperate to tie him down beyond the summer. I think contract talks are going on some sort of level. But this is a situation Aberdeen haven't been in a few years. I mean, in terms of players being out of contract or top players being out of contract the following summer, it's something the club's got better at over the last few years, is tying players down to that long-term contract. So when your McKenna goes or Cosgrove goes, you do get a little bit of a fee for them in the end of it. It's just that it just happens to be that Hedges, his contract's up next summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he would be a big miss. And as we said, Watkins taking his goal really well. And after we scored the goal, Calum, I really only felt there was one team set to win the game, because it seemed to be just one-way traffic towards Craig Gordon's goal.
I said that. I think maybe it was the corner before the one we got. The goal said to go around me. There's only one team winning this game. I'm not going to say who, don't want to jinx it, but there's only one team winning this game. And yeah, that was the case. After I think the second half, it was basically one-way traffic for the most part. And you can't argue that the win was deserved. I was on surrounded by Hearts fans on the train, and they were saying, "Oh, there's no way Aberdeen deserved that. They were terrible. We were just worse." I was like, "No, that's not the case at all. I think we genuinely were. I'm not being biased here. I hope not, anyway. But I genuinely think we did deserve that." And obviously, I think we'll get onto it. But the set piece was it's a work of art. It really was.
Yeah, and I suppose to bring the comment that you just said, Ben, I think Robbie Nielsen came out and was quite critical of Hearts not being good enough or not reaching the levels that they had this season. But I kind of agree with Calum. I just think that Aberdeen almost became unplayable in that second half. And had it not been for Craig Gordon probably pulling out one of the best saves I've seen live in a long time to deny Christian Ramirez. It could have been a lot worse for Hearts.
I was saying this to somebody else today who, not an Aberdeen fan, supports someone else, but I said, that Craig Gordon save, the television footage doesn't do it justice just for the sheer pace of it. I watched Sportscene back and I was chuckling at Stephen Thompson. Well, Ramirez, he's got to put him more into the corner. And I was started looking like, he's taking his time, he's taking it past the defender, and then he's fired down into the corner. I mean, he's done everything right, Ramirez. There's absolutely nothing more he can do. And the speed at which Gordon clearly reads it, which is him taking a gamble, but that's years of experience shining through, I suppose. Scoops it up and then collects it at the second attempt. It's a magnificent save. And I mean, if he doesn't stop that, I mean, Aberdeen has scored 2 goals in quick succession, and then you'd probably expect him to go on and bag a couple more. For the second half performance on Saturday was probably as good as Aberdeen have played all season. I think the first half was tepid, it wasn't great, but the second half it just looked like a Stephen Glass team playing, if you know what I mean. It looked like the ideas that he'd had coming to fruition, if you will.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And even the point you make about Ramirez, I was thinking, why is he not hit it first time? And when he sells the defender, I thought, he's done it brilliantly. But Craig Gordon clearly having other ideas. And, as well as Aberdeen played, we touched on the noise the crowd had. And I think there was definitely something around the red shed and it getting to certain Hearts players, Andy Halliday in particular, definitely affected by being wound up from the red shed, as we'll come on to. But Aberdeen have been brilliant at set pieces so far this season, Calum. I think that makes it 8 goals from set pieces now, with Lewis Ferguson heading home. What seems to be a bit of a set piece specialist in Dylan McGee. There's a tongue twister for you.
I know, you did well to get that one out. The second time asking, but no, it was basically the perfect set piece. Just everything that they'd worked on there seemed to just fall into place. Perfect ball in from McGee. Obviously, you see in the replay, obviously didn't notice at the time, but Brown pushing Hedges into Ferguson's marker, Bates peeling off to take Halkett out of the situation, Watkins going in front of Gordon just to unsight him. It was perfect. But also, even regardless of all that, Ferguson still got to get up there and get that header on target and get it past, obviously, a brilliant and informed Craig Gordon, and he does so. It was superb, and what a celebration it gave us as well. Very much enjoyable. It looked like Ferguson enjoyed it too, a lot of it as well.
Definitely, and I actually don't know, I can't remember if Gordon even gets a touch on it or not, but it was just excellent pace to header, but obviously attributed to the quality of the ball, and you touched on the good points there. The surrounding play with Brown throwing Hedges into Beningame and Bates peeling off to the back post. There was clearly, we questioned Calum during this poor run of form about what's getting done on the training part. Is it because there's not enough time between European and domestic games? And it's clear we're beginning to see the evidence of what is being produced on the training ground. And Ben, a player that's kind of come in from the cold as such due to the injury to Declan Gallagher and Scott Brown dropping into defence is Dylan McGee. And 2 terrific performances at Ibrox and then followed up at Pittodrie, and probably his performance at Pittodrie maybe only overshadowed by the fact of how good Marley Watkins was.
Yeah, but just a point on McGee in the set pieces, because Aberdeen quite clearly, Stephen Glass or Alan Russell, whoever, clearly have a playbook of set pieces that we can just go through and say, right, we'll try this one this weekend or this one this weekend. It's always like the NFL in a weird kind of way. McGee and Calvin Ramsey was the one taking all the free kicks and all the corners. Their deliveries are very, very similar. In fact, we just kind of lift it up into the box and put it into an area. It's not like we're curling it in, we're not drilling it in. Just very similar. Put it up into an area and let whoever's running onto it just go and meet it, kind of thing. McGee was great, and I mean, it could have been easy for him being thrown into, well, it's not a lion's den according to Stephen Gerrard, but being thrown into at the deep end, if you will, at Ibrox. I mean, it's not an easy place to go. Although Aberdeen did make it look like that for the first 45 minutes. McGee was great. I mean, to burden or to live up to that expectation and go in there, fair play. And he was great again against Hearts. And I mean, it was only when I went back and had a look at his soccer-based stats. It was the Ibrox game was his first start since the Ross County defeat, I think it was, Raith Rovers defeat, sorry. which feels like an absolute lifetime ago now. And I mean, McGeouch came in, and what I will say as well is that he's clearly been preferred to Matty Longstaff as well. Mm-hmm. It could have been one or the other. Like Stephen Glass has clearly felt that McGeouch's the one he can trust in this situation, and fair play to him, because he certainly lived up to expectations so far.
Yeah, and Callum, that was a point you made actually before the trip to Ibrox about probably playing McGeouch maybe down to his experience in terms of Scottish football, and I think we've certainly seen that shine through in the last 2 games.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's also just got that calming influence. When he's on the ball, you know, 9 times out of 10, he's not going to give it away, and he's going to find a man in a red shirt one way or another. I think a couple of times, I think in the first half, also, he was very, very good. There's a couple of times close to where I am in the south stand, where he was looking to make things happen, and there was just 2 static forwards, and Ramirez and Watkins just giving him no options. But no, it's very much welcome. It's a good point Ben makes, though, obviously being preferred to Matty Longstaff, I think, due to the trust of maybe working with me a bit longer, I suppose. But also, regardless, keeping someone who's on the books at a Premier League club out of the team, leaving him on the bench, it's no mean feat at all. And I think that's credit to McGeouch's attitude, really, as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, that attitude's the right thing to say, given, as Ben says, you know, if that was his first start at Ibrox since the Wraith game, for someone that's been out of the team for so long to keep up that positive attitude. And we, you know, look back at Dean Campbell as well, another player that came on at Tynecastle and then hadn't featured since at Ibrox. Both these players obviously keeping their head down, working hard, and not, you know, just like I'm not getting a game, I'll just have that bit of a negative attitude, taking their opportunities when it comes in, and doing so in such a positive manner. And one person that didn't have a positive manner when they entered the field at Pittodrie was a Mr. Andy Halliday. Cal, what did you make of the tackle on Lewis Ferguson?
It was a howler. To be fair, I didn't really expect Clancy to pull out that red card, in all honesty. I'd just given the way Clancy had been refereeing the game, to be fair. But I think, I remember you mentioned the red shed getting to him. I think, honestly, that could have maybe had a big effect. So I remember realising it from the south stand, him getting a bit of stick. And I've got another one the Hearts fans were mentioning on the train around me when I was trying to keep my head down and not look at them. Why was Nielsen bringing him on to try and change a game? It seems mental. It was just total lunacy to bring him on and try and change that game. And he had an effect on it, but it just sort of ruled out any chance of Hearts getting back into it. It was an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see how things go between Derek Ferguson and Andy Halliday on an open goal next time.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting you make the comment about Clancy, because certainly from my view in the red shed I thought it was a clear as day red card, you know, the speed and the way he went in. But then, you know, looking back on sports, you know, maybe you can understand why folks saying it's a harsh red. Ben, did Robbie Nielsen have any complaints around it?
Robbie Nielsen said along the lines of but there's no point appealing it with no Scottish referees now, so we're not going to appeal it, kind of thing. What I find funny about Scottish football is that you've got players in the last few weeks making tackles, winning the ball but going through, and everybody getting them a high horse saying, oh, that's a shocking tackle. It's a red card, you can't tackle like that anymore. But when a player and let's be honest with this, there's absolutely no intention by Andy Halliday to win the ball when he's tackling Lewis Ferguson. So when somebody just absolutely smashes somebody and dives in, folk go, well, you know, it's a little bit mistimed, but well, I'm not sure if it's a red. Come on, you can't pick or choose what's a red card and what's not just because just
who they're
like the guy kind of thing.
Fair point.
I know. So that makes me chuckle. I mean, I thought initially, I thought it's a red card. I think Ferguson sees him coming at the last second, is able to ride it. If you look at Halliday's, I think it's maybe his left boot, his studs are actually up and he's very close to catching Ferguson in a bad spot on his ankle or whatever. It's a red card. We just need to accept it.
To be fair, sorry, just before we move on about Andy Halliday, I don't really know what he brings to a game in any team, in all honesty. He's not a fantastic footballer, and he just seems to be a bit of a hothead, a bit of a lunatic, and he does things like that. I don't really get it. I think it's because he's staunch, he keeps getting these gigs at certain clubs. But it doesn't... it's baffling that he's made a career out of this football.
Well, he made his point on Sunday with the tannoy at Tynecastle anyway. But what did you make of Scott Brown's reaction, Callum? You know, Scott Brown was a signing that many, it's fair to say, were undecided on. Both of us maybe also having our doubts, it's fair to say, on his signing. But, he was doing turns in the bottom corner on Barry Mackay, and then he was throttling Andy Halliday for, potentially career-ending Lewis Ferguson, although, Ferguson does get up and walk away from the challenge. But as Ben says, I think if Ferguson doesn't see him coming in and be able to ride the challenge, it could have been a totally different outcome. But it's great to see from your captain getting in and standing up for his teammates.
Yeah, I think we are seeing that leadership now, especially in these last 3 games. I think maybe in that Bayern run as well, we'd questioned it. I don't know if we were the only ones or not, who knows. But we are starting to see that leadership. It's great to see. It's sort of what Shinnie used to do. He'll go charging and flying for any teammate. But it's what we've seen Brown do over the years so many times. It's great to see him. I think he would have loved it a little bit more as well. The fact it was Halliday. Also, that little turn on Mackay and ex-Rangers man in front of the away end. That was brilliant. And there was another time when he had his hand out waiting for Cammy Devlin to pass him the ball, and Cammy Devlin thought it was going for like a little handshake thing, and Scott Brown looked at him with such disgust, and the poor Australian probably had no idea what he was getting himself in for there. But it's brilliant to see. It's the type of player, there's always, every other opposition team will hate him, and I understand why we've hated him, but now why Celtic fans loved him all those years, essentially. And then he went out and enjoyed himself on the Saturday night too.
Well, I hope he managed to enjoy himself, because it seemed that every second minute seemed to be a photo with a different Aberdeen fan. So I'm not sure how many pints he managed to enjoy. But Ben, you had an article with Lewis Ferguson published at the weekend about how Aberdeen had hit rock bottom and it basically couldn't continue. Do you get the sense that the players have almost learned from that? What was probably quite a chastening defeat to Dundee?
I mean, to be honest, certainly not in the aftermath of it. And the reason I made the rock bottom reference is because that's what Ferguson said after the Dundee game. This is rock bottom. That is not a pleasant experience for anybody. For the player having to come up and field questions on Stephen Glass's case that night, or for the journalists asking it. I mean, it's a horrible situation for everybody to be in, but ultimately, it's what you're there to do. I mean, it's your job. So Ferguson comes out with that night as rock bottom, and but of course, how quickly things change. Cormac goes on the radio. Aberdeen beat Hibs. Should probably beat Rangers if they thrash Hearts. I mean, but if you told me after the Dundee game that Aberdeen would get 7 points for the next 3 games, I probably wouldn't have believed you, to be honest. I wouldn't have expected it. Where it just came, maybe there was a point where we looked around at each other and said, Christ, this isn't good enough, is it? Let's pull the finger out a bit here. And well, something's changed. Something's changed, and it's certainly working.
Yeah, and I mean, Ben, we quoted your tweet of the comments that Stephen Glass made after the Dundee game, and I don't know about you, but it certainly felt like he was a dead man walking at that point. And I think the fact of whether it's not linked to the Cormac reaction on Sports Sound or not, but there has been a change in, even Glass is commenting on the team spirit. We saw that in terms of the togetherness at the goal from Christian Ramirez against Hibs. But do you sense that in Stephen Glass? Obviously results help, but he's got that bit of confidence back about himself, because he definitely looked like a dead man walking, as I said, against Dundee.
He certainly seems to be enjoying the job a lot more the last week. I mean, that even after the Dundee game, he kind of offered up that kind of open-ended quotes like, I know what happens to managers after results. So this wasn't as if somebody had said to him, do you expect a sack? It was like something along the lines of, obviously the fans have made their opinions here tonight, and he says, I know what happens after this, blah, 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 blah. But now he's coming out. I mean, Stephen Glass is a great person to interview in terms of post-match and pretty much stuff, because he answers everybody's question. He takes everything on, and he expands on topics, and he speaks about topics, which is great as a journalist. I found the Dave Cormac interview fascinating. I mean, it was terrific radio just to sit and listen to it, no matter who you supported, to be honest. And it was always going to be a combative interview with Kenny McIntyre. It's just what he does. And I mean, it's like I said, it's great entertainment. But he made a point there to Kenny that night. It was along the lines of, you don't care about Aberdeen fans, and it's only we care about Aberdeen, kind of thing. And I think it struck a chord probably with a lot of Aberdeen fans, that. And I mean, it's particularly getting it up the kind of the West Coast, Glasgow, Ouija press, if you will. Like, Aberdeen don't really care what you've got to think about this. We'll get on with and fix out our problems up in the North East in a row. We don't need you pontificating about us, kind of thing. And I think that there probably has been a bit of that siege mentality over the last week. Now, results do help. I mean, Christ, I'd be saying something totally different if Aberdeen had got beat 3 games in a row and be saying, oh, that was a silly interview Dave Cormack gave. But it certainly seems to have struck a chord, and what he said that night, a lot of supporters resonated with. And I think ultimately it comes down to a lot of Aberdeen fans want to see Stephen Glass do well as Aberdeen manager. I liked him as a player, I like him as a man, and we see that he's trying to do something a bit different. So it would have been easy for the chairman to sack him after the Dundee game, or Stephen Glass to walk away from it, whatever, but we've stuck with it, and certainly, look, it's only 3 games that we're basing this on, but it seems to be that Aberdeen have turned a corner. Now, of course, if we get beat next week from Motherwell, then we'll be sitting saying, oh, it's back to square one, what have you, but that's just how fickle football is, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point and leads me into the next point. And Callum, we touched on that in the Hibs game about the kind of siege mentality being created. And again, I feel like that was part of the atmosphere on Saturday. Not only was it a chance to end Hearts' title challenge, because they pretty much won the league in September, going by the way their fans were acting, but also it's giving that sense of togetherness from the Aberdeen support. And Ben makes an excellent point. As good as week it's been for Aberdeen and getting 7 from 9, really should have been 9 from 9, but that doesn't matter if we can't go and follow that up against a Motherwell side who aren't, let's be honest, in the greatest run of form.
They aren't, no. I think, in a way, this next game as Motherwell is a bigger of a task as those 3 games, because I think with the momentum generated from those 3 in a week, going from good result, obviously helps. Whereas now we've got a week to go between then and the Motherwell game, and it's very, very important to then go into the international break on a high and with another win. And who knows what that could do for the team if they go obviously 4 unbeaten, 3 wins and a draw at Ibrox, going away into the international break, and they've got time to work on things even further. But I think it is massive. I think, interesting you mentioned the siege mentality kind of thing. I think it has helped a lot that those 3 games against sort of 3 of the 4 biggest Central Belt clubs, which will have buoyed the fans especially as well. But it's got to continue. It's hopefully we have turned a corner. I don't want to speak too soon, but we'd like to think so. But it's very, very important that we go on and carry this on for international break.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we want to get that momentum going into the international break. And we are, looking to kind of after the international break, it's a trip to Tannadice, a trip to Parkhead. And unfortunately, that trip to Tannadice is a trip that's going to be made without the red shed, because Dundee United are not selling Aberdeen shed end tickets, and that is fact, because we've just received the Sports Club order and it is only for the Jerry Care and Fair Play stands. So that's a bit disappointing, when we speak about marketing Scottish football in a positive manner. But Ben, on the Motherwell game, as Callum says, it's important that we, back the result up and after what we've done recently. But should we be wary of this Motherwell side? It's 5 without a win, and the manner of defeat that they had on Sunday at the hand of Rangers, they're kind of coming here in a bit of disarray.
Aye, Motherwell had such a strange season. Remember, it was down at Dundee versus Motherwell in the Premier Sports Cup. I can't remember if it was the group stage or the second round. But Graham Alexander was heckled off the pitch and fans giving him abuse, get out of our club. And then next week, or a couple of months later, they're 2nd or 3rd in the league, they're flying high. And then now they're sliding down the table and fans are questioning their play. I think this season's Premiership season, I just think every team will take points off every team. I think it's that tight a league. I don't know if it's necessarily because teams are much better or much worse. I just think teams are just going to take points off one another this year. Aberdeen should be wary. Of course they should be wary, but at the same time, Motherwell will be wary of facing Aberdeen. So that'll be interesting. But it just shows how quickly things change in this league, and the point I'm trying to make. You look at Tab Courts, who is 1 week the next Guardiola, and you look how clever that Dundee United have been appointing a manager and taking a risk like this. And then you got it the same way Postecoglou at Celtic, and folks saying 1 week about Ange Ball, and then the next week, he's not actually that good a manager at all. And you could probably argue it with Glass to some extent as well, is that he's gone on this bad run, he's a dud, and that because he gets 3 decent results in a week, he's a hero. I mean, I think things are just going to change a lot this year in terms of narratives and perspectives of how a club's getting on. Back to your original point, yes, Aberdeen should be worried about Motherwell, but no more than any other club we will face this year.
And I suppose you're absolutely right about the point you make, because we've suddenly turned a corner and provided this, upturn in fortunes, I suppose, if you want to call it that. And as a result of Motherwell's defeat at the weekend, it's actually seen Aberdeen jump into the top 6 on goal difference. The European hunt is back on. But it's an interesting point you make, Ben, about the teams are beating each other, because you look at some of the teams, Hibs, Motherwell, have suddenly gone on these really poor runs of form, and when being right up there in the Premiership table have suddenly slid back down. And from 5th to 10th, 5 points separates those positions. The league is so congested, so if you do go on a good run of form or a bad run of form, it is quick to go up or down the table this season. And it is so exciting from a Scottish football point of view to see a congested league and see this kind of excitement building. But Callum, as Ben says, Motherwell should be wary of an Aberdeen team that have picked up form. And Motherwell have actually only won twice away from home all season. Once at Queen's Park in the Premier Sports, which again, as Ben says, can't really read much into given pre-season. And then a win at Livingston. So they don't exactly have the best form away from Fir Park, but we've certainly looked good at home in the last week.
We definitely have. I think Motherwell obviously still have players capable of damaging us, Kevin Van Veen and sort of Tony Watt in particular. And I think of all clubs, I think maybe it might suit us in a way. Motherwell not on a great form, but we know that it can turn very, very quickly, so we need to be wary of that as things have turned for us. But it's not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think any are this season. As Ben mentioned, everyone will be taking points off everybody, but it makes for good entertainment anyway, one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose in terms of entertainment will be the key battle between Scott Brown and Tony Watt. Ben, that's probably a battle that will be one to be watched with interest.
It's a legitimate dilemma that Stephen Glass now has, is whether he keeps Scott Brown in defence or pushes him back into midfield. I mean, certainly in the first half against Hearts, it gave Aberdeen good shape having him in the middle of defence, and I mean, they gave support to Bates and McCrory as well. But on the other hand, in the second half, when he pushed onto midfield, Aberdeen were so much better on the front foot. It was night and day to the first half. So, I mean, look, Brown and Watt will clash in the game, but whether Brown starts in defence and midfield, I mean, I wouldn't fancy being Stephen Glass and making that decision.
No, and I'm sure Scott Brown will definitely remember the wee head pat that Tony Watt gave him during the 2-0 defeat. He doesn't seem to forget much, but equally, Callum, you listed players that will give Aberdeen's defence problems, and we know that Bates hasn't had the best of starts to his Aberdeen career, and hopefully he can have a good performance on Saturday. But we should be fully encouraged by the link-up play that, as Ben commented on, Hedges, Ramirez and Watkins caused problems for Hibs. Hearts, Motherwell defenders must be looking at that thinking, we're going to have a tough 90 minutes ahead of us on Saturday.
I think so, obviously, especially after conceding 6 against Rangers. They'll probably without Stephen O'Donnell suspension. And also, I suppose, Ramirez, another week, if he was slightly affected with that knock against Heart that he got against Rangers going into the Hearts game, then he's got another week to recover. Watkins has got a full week, so he should be fine to go again. And also Ryan Hedges. So, we've got the players, we've got the capability that, as Ben also mentioned in earlier in the show, that can sort of cause problems to any defence, let alone one that are maybe a little bit fragile after last week's performance.
Yeah, and I think the thing I took encouragement from in that Motherwell game was the fact that how poor Motherwell were at defending the balls into the box and allowing James Tavernier the time to get the balls into the box. I know obviously we don't have Ramsey, who's, we've seen the quality he's been able to deliver from a wide area, but Dean Campbell's come in and produced good play from the left-hand side. So opportunities at Aberdeen, I'm sure he'll be able to exploit, and I'm sure Alan Russell's combing over ways of being able to exploit the set pieces, Ben.
There was a stat, I think it was Robbie Nielsen made after the game, and I'd never heard it before, and I haven't got the time to go and check it out, to be quite frank. But somebody had said to him along the lines of, you must be disappointed with conceding another couple of goals from set piece or whatever it was. And he'd said 75% of goals in this Premiership are scored from set pieces. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, it seems like a hell of a high number. Yeah. And it just shows that if you do have someone who knows a bit about set pieces, I mean, you're seeing it at all levels now, that especially in the Premier League, they're getting speciality coaches in, which Alan Russell, as much as Stephen Glass says how great a coach he is away from just the striking stuff, he is a speciality coach. I mean, that's what earned him the gig at England ultimately, is because of what he can do with strikers in the final third. So we've seen it already with Aberdeen, but we've clearly got a notebook full of set piece kind of plays there. And I'm sure we'll be looking at Motherwell and thinking, we could probably get a couple of goals through this kind of method again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's going to be an interesting game on Saturday. Certainly one, if I was able to attend at the weekend, I would be very much looking forward to, given the recent run of results, Callum. And I'm sure we'll see another good crowd at Pittodrie getting fully behind the team.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Another Saturday 3:00 kick-off game, which is always welcome. And I think, obviously the form we're on as well will give us a bit more backing, ever increasing confidence, I guess, now. Now that we've turned the corner a little bit. Very much looking forward to it. Not looking forward to be the only one of us two that have been at the game, so the onus will be on me to pay attention to everything. It's just never a good sign.
No, never a good thing, but don't worry, I'll be catching up on the Red TV highlights before we record next Monday. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on and giving us an insight into your point of view from the Aberdeen side of things, and also being able to comment on Hearts' lack of title challenge. Probably Bucky are going to put up more of a title challenge in Hearts this season.
Hope so. It looks like the Jags are falling down the table, unfortunately, but we'll live in hope.
Yeah, we'll live in hope. Well, I hope you don't, because I've got a few pals that play for Fraser, so I'm going to hope you don't see a title challenge.
That's the last time I'm coming back in your bloody podcast then, so you can fuck it off.
No, but it's been an absolute pleasure getting you on, Ben. Really pleased that you've given up the time tonight to chat to us.
Aye, pleasure. Thanks, boys. It's been great.
Well, thanks very much to Ben Palmer there for joining us on the latest episode of Red Tinted Glasses. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And Callum, it's going to be interesting to see how you develop over the next month, because for those that aren't watching, you're very much clean shaven today and you're partaking in Movember.
I am. I'm babyface. So first of all, you should subscribe to stick around and see how I develop with Movember. And also, I'll be leaving the link in the description if you fancy just donating what you can. If you can, that would be much appreciated. It'll be interesting. I'll end up with some probably very minimal, questionable facial hair by the end of it, but it's for a good cause, and if I look like a little bit of an idiot or suspect, then it's fine. It's fine. It's only for a month.
Yeah, and you're definitely got a long way to go to catch up with my facial hair anyway. Mm-hmm. But we have also retweeted the link that you have tweeted out from your own Twitter account. So if you do follow us on RTG_podcast on Twitter, you can find the link there. We'll sure to post about it on our Instagram story, which is rtg.podcast. So if you're on Instagram, head over there. And thank you very much to those of you once again for tuning into the latest episode of Red Tinted Glasses. We will be back, of course, next week to cover the Motherwell game as we head into the international break.